Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk about this idea that I hear, well, it's a sentiment I hear expressed a lot. And it usually goes something like this. Can Hollywood stop rehashing old material all the time? Are they incapable of making anything new? Why won't Hollywood make something new? And it's an interesting sentiment, and I hear it expressed a couple different ways. Now, on the one hand, I do agree with an angle of it, but I also think that another angle on it is a little dangerous. So I thought we'd talk about that a little bit. When you hear a normie express that sentiment, it's usually from exhaustion at all of the franchise films. Oh, enough with the superhero movies. Can they just make a new story or an original story or anything like that? That's one place you hear it from. And from the normies that don't understand or know any better, it's an understandable sentiment, right? This is also the mindset that you hear this from, who was it? I forget the famous filmmaker. Was it Spielberg? I don't think it was Spielberg. Maybe it was. Somebody like that. Years ago it said, oh, the superhero thing, it's just a bubble. It'll burst eventually and people will get over it. And you heard that sentiment from a lot of directors who were just angry that their artsy-fartsy films, are original films, to be fair, of any nature, weren't making the big, huge box office bucks that superheroes films were making at that time. Now, Disney and Warner Brothers have purposefully just crashed that whole model. There's no guarantee that your big Marvel film is going to make a ton by any means anymore, because they've, been unfaithful with the subject matter, and that's part of this too. But to normie who doesn't understand that, they might think, yeah, okay, the superhero movie bubble's finally bursting a little bit. Good, we're getting some more original films now, or maybe we'll get some more original films now. And that's not the case. There's nothing, I come at these things from a mythological angle, understanding a society and individuals, group of individuals, their need for these types of stories, and their need for these types of stories to be told and retold, and for further adventures of these same heroes to be told. We'll talk about that. There's a real importance of that. But Hollywood's simply just not faithful. They don't know how to do the right, correct, effective telling for it to be mythologically effective and psychologically effective for us as a society. So yeah, absolutely. In that respect, and it's 100% understandable, normies would be like, enough with this stuff. We want some original stories. And it's important to have original stories. There's an importance to that too, as well to society. So that's an importance as well. So that's the normies, understandable sentiment. Sometimes, though, I hear even a little bit of that fatigue from fandoms, from geeks who like this kinds of stuff. And they'll say, oh, just enough, and we want some new stories. Can you tell us some new, even if it's, genre stuff, give us a new science fiction story and stop trying to adapt all this old material. And we know why Hollywood does that, right? It's no secret that they are just obsessed with this idea that it's less risky to make a film that already has a built-in fan base, whether it's a sequel or a, preferably something like a Lord of the Rings or whatever. Nowadays we have to include television series into that as well, our Disney Plus series, our Amazon series, or whatever. They think it's more, it's a safer bet, but it's really not. Recent offerings from the box office have proved that. I mean, we had Maverick, a sequel to Top Gun, which made tons of money, pleased everybody. So that would seem to prove that this kind of, it's better to take the risk with something, But then again, at the same time, you had Buzz Lightyear. Talk about a crazy built-in fan base with the Toy Story stuff, and they didn't do it right, and it just utterly failed. So it doesn't matter. It's not that, it's less risky. No, it's less risky to tell a good story, regardless of whether it has a built-in fan base or not. And we do need more original stories. We're not getting enough of those. That's for certain. So I seem to be agreeing with this sentiment quite a bit. Where I think this sentiment is dangerous, though, it's dangerous for us to fail to understand why these heroes and these characters that have stuck around in our public consciousness for so long, why they keep getting stories, aside from Hollywood just trying to, burying them into ground for money, grabs or whatever. But they do stay relevant in the public consciousness because they are important. They have taken a place in our American mythology. It's true. So it's important, on the one hand, for us to continue to get really good, solid Superman stories. It's important for us to get good, Captain America stories. It's important for us to have Luke Skywalker stories, all of these things. Now, The thing is, and this is horrible, Hollywood has made it impossible. Not just Hollywood, but the publishers and whatnot. They've made it impossible to receive good quality stories from these characters that we've known and love. So yeah, hypothetically, we desperately need right now a good Superman movie. And I don't mean anything attached to Warner Brothers garbage they've been putting out. I don't want any other verse Superman. I don't want this Lois or Superman and Lois garbage that the CW is trying to pass off. No, it would be wonderful, and hypothetically speaking, to have like a, let's say, and this is where fans can fall into this sort of dangerous dreaming and not really taking into account the state of Hollywood today. But they think, oh, but wouldn't it be great if we had the right person on this movie? And if we had for the Superman, for example, what if we had a script by Paul Dini and Brad Bird to direct? Wouldn't that be amazing? Even if you can have the most perfect dream team on a film, and hypothetically, that'd be amazing. You can only imagine how wonderful that would be. The system of Hollywood will not allow that to happen in any kind of way that it should. The system is too far infiltrated and infested and sick with the disease of ideologues and ideology, and they will just put those tendrils of this woke thing or that or this thing, or the executive interfering and meddling, from execs who don't really understand. It's just impossible to have it made. And you might say, well, how did Maverick get made in this so well then? And I haven't seen Maverick, right? Top Gun's just not something I'm very interested in. But I understand it's great, and that's wonderful. I'm really glad it exists. And you say, well, how did something like that get made? Well, of course, something has slipped through the cracks, but I think the reason something like a Maverick can get made is because you don't really have a rabid Top Gun fan base, right? That was a movie that existed that a lot of people loved, and if you do something else with it with the same actors, it might raise your eyebrows like, oh, hey, maybe I'll go revisit that good time I had in the theater back in the 80s or whatever. It's not like, people have been reading the Top Gun comics and novels, and it's not like a fandom necessarily. So something like that, in that case, it's easier to see how that can slip through. But yeah, Hollywood is in a state right now where it's just too far infested. There's just no, and some fans just can't get this through their little skulls. Oh, but maybe the next one will be good. Maybe this one will be good. And, people telling me, man, Stranger Things season 4 really fixes the problems of season. No, it doesn't. It can't. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's wonderful. If it did back off on some of the preaching of season 3, great. It's built on the continuity of it. You can't get away from it. Once that stone is laid in the building, the next one has to go on top of it. No matter how better cut that next stone is, it has to rest on top of it. It's gonna mesh into some of the settle in and have to fit together as a piece. So this notion that, the next one will be better, we're light years away from that. It's sad. I wish we weren't, but we are. That's just the nature of the system now. It's the nature of our culture and our society right now. We've let this cancer of ideologies grow, and it's just infiltrated everything. And it doesn't have to last forever, and I don't think it will last forever, but it's going to take people, as I've said many times, close that wallet, walk away. Stop saying, well, maybe the Ahsoka series will be, well, maybe, they're doing another Superman movie that's not in the continuity, or, well, hey, but they're doing an anime Lord of the Rings, and that'll probably be great, because anime is amazing, and everything anime is wonderful, No, it's Hollywood. Maybe this or that little tiny gem will slip through. I'm not saying it won't, but when it does, it should be a pleasant surprise and something that you find out about when you're not looking for it, right? It shouldn't be a pleasant little thing that's released in the midst of all the garbage you've already consumed and hurt your own soul with, because, oh, there's a good one. See, I wouldn't have known this good thing came out if I didn't consume all of that poison, No, stop it. So, I'm a little scattered right now, but I've got these thoughts, and I'm still on track with the idea of what should Hollywood do? Should they start producing more new movies? Now, yes, they should. Like I said, I don't think this infestation, this cancer of ideology is going to go just away like that. And if they start producing original content, it's certainly not going anywhere. It'll still infest their original content. And they won't just start, doing original content. They're going to keep beating all of these tried and true franchises to death. To the point where people say, yeah, superheroes are kind of dead now. No, they're not. They didn't have to be. It's because Hollywood just proved that they can't do anything right with them, and they just did it horribly and horribly and horribly to death. That's how that's going to work. And then people will say, yeah, culture finally got tired of that. No, they didn't get tired of it. They got tired of bad stories of it. So Hollywood should start telling original stories. It'd be great if they could leave all of our beloved things alone. They're not going to, though. But what does that leave us? Where does that leave us as a society and individual, as a culture and individuals who desperately need these characters and stories and mythologies that have served a purpose? You know, they've served as archetypes. They've inspired us as aspirational characters. They've inspired us as cathartic motivational characters to keep getting up when we fail and to try harder. You know, they've inspired us as frontiersmen to try out new territory. They've inspired us as tricksters to question things. They've inspired us, as all these archetypal ways. Where does that leave us when we don't have their stories anymore? When those stories by copyright holders are being told and retconned and pushed into an ideologue form where they no longer serve their purpose. They no longer are effective as mythological characters. Well, the only thing we can do right now is to create new characters to fulfill that purpose. But we have to turn away from the Hollywood big system. We do have the internet, which is great. We have technologies now that put a lot of power into independent creators' hands that we've never had before. What we don't have is any kind of system to, other than public, opinion on this. We don't have any system to moderate the quality. To say, no, that's poorly written. Glad you just wrote that in the first draft, and you want to just throw it out there now, but no, that's not ready yet. That doesn't really resonate. Public supply and demand, public response is all we have for that. And that, there's something to be said for that. That's good enough, but that needs traction. That needs time to gain ground to really find out what are the good, solid new stories and new characters that are stepping into these archetypes. When you've got a world where anybody, any unknown creator can pop in and do that, it takes longer for traction to grow. It takes longer for people to figure out which character, oh, that is a good frontiersman. Oh, that is a good, person that is, and people don't really understand archetypes, but they can understand, hey, this character is inspiring me in much the way that Luke Skywalker used to inspire me or whatever, And you've always got the old books, the old comics, the old movies, but there is something to be said for the need of new stories of these characters to be told and to be tailored to a new generation time-wise. They can't be altered fundamentally, but there's something to be said for new stories that are tailored to new generations and new time periods that we travel in as a culture. Sure. I think the answer, and this whole video has kind of gotten to this point, I think the answer, and some people argue with me on this, I think the best thing in the world would be for these characters to go into the public domain. I don't know if that'll happen. The big companies keep changing the rules and putting pressure on Congress and all this kind of stuff. This is why Mickey Mouse has never entered the public domain yet, because Disney keeps, strong-arming the laws into, pushing out that date. But the best thing in the world for a character like Superman would be to go into the public domain. And people say, oh, how can you say that? Then anybody can write all this stuff with him. And yeah, anybody can write. How are they going to write anything worse than what's being done with Superman in DC Comics and what has been being done with Superman in DC Comics, in the last years? How are they going to do anything worse? They can't possibly. These companies no longer understand or appreciate their own characters, what they have, their own mythological archetypes. The best thing in the world is for these characters to hit the public domain, because then with all of these creators, anyone in the world can just write a Superman story. Then you've got writers who truly understand the character that can write and market and sell or whatever and put out there on the market their stories of this character. And it's easier. It's easier for the audience to see a recognizable character like Superman, and we know what that character should be, and we can read that story and judge that, oh, yep, that is in line. Good, that's a great story. And then that story can gain traction and get a wider audience. And then we have a good Superman story, just for example, out there that's doing the work and letting Superman do his cultural work there. And it's more widespread. It gets a faster disbursement. That's much faster than writing a completely new original character and having to get people accustomed and familiar with that new character, and then start to realize, okay, that new character does sort of, achieve the same effect as this other one. Okay, that works. That's, it's a fast track. So what do we do then? We can't just make the laws change. right away. But we can, support that. We can make our support known for changing and letting the copyright laws go into effect and let these characters go into public domain. Sure, we can do that. In the meantime, all we can do then is write your original stories, your original characters. So how do you, when you're writing original character, how do you kind of bypass or help audiences who aren't familiar with the character because it's new? Help audiences realize this character is there to serve the purpose. Some people might think it's cheap, but I think it's necessary. Mythologically, it's necessary. It's not copying, and you don't want to copyright infringe, certainly. But you need to put little tips and hints and whatnot in to let it be known that your character, while not the same character as this other mainstream copyright character, is fulfilling that same archetype, and there's a fine line between that. You can go too far and copyright infringe, but at the same time, these are archetypes, and there's no copyright on the archetype of the paragon or the frontiersman and so forth. So, I'd put out my story, a while ago. I think I read it in a YouTube video of the Blue Wonder, which is my Superman analog. Not that he's just, my disguised version is Superman. No, he's an original character. He's got his own backstory, but he still very much fulfills that, or is written to fulfill anyway, that same paragon, aspirational paragon role that Superman does. And he's got some similar, background and some similar points along his story that would help him to fulfill that same role, but he's different enough to be his own original character. And you read, you read things like I've talked about Alan Moore's Supreme, which was the Superman analog from Image Comics, where he remade the character of Supreme into that wonderful Superman analog. A bigger company like that can get away with it more than an independent creator. Disney and Warner Brothers, they don't care about you guys. They're all about trying to squash any little upstart competition, especially one that might be writing the stories better than they can. So just because you read this or that story with a Iron Man analog or a Luke Skywalker analog or whatever doesn't mean that you can be quite that free with some of the references and whatnot. You might have to play it a little safer, but I think we can think about things that are just kind of symbols in the public consciousness. For Superman, for example, he's just my example for this video. A square-jawed hero with a blue cape. The character of the color of blue is really associated with Superman, but there's no copyright on the color blue, right? So I can call a character the Blue Wonder, and Superman is called the Caped Wonder, and he's known for our Blue Boy and stuff like that. So that works, but there's no copyright on the Blue Wonder. That name. It's, I've published a story with it, so it's copyrighted, to that extent. But, the DC doesn't own that, or Warner Brothers doesn't own that. That kind of thing. So whatever your story is, if you're writing a universe that's very much sort of a Star Wars analog, you've got your own space fantasy or space opera type story, and there's something like the Force, okay. You can't use the word Force, but certain things like light and dark, like I've said before, I'm a fan of the Kingdom Hearts games. Again, I haven't played 3. I understand 3 probably drops the ball a lot. But you play Birth by Sleep, the Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and it really provides this whole background lore of the Keyblade Masters. It's very much like the Jedi and the Force and the light and the dark and all of that, So certain things like that aren't copyright, Find the things that are significant and do stick in the public consciousness that are surrounded that archetype that you want to write your character for. And latch onto that and put those things out there. Put it in the character design or the marketing or the names and whatever, help the audience know that this is what you're serving them up. Since all the pizza places have now decided to, I don't know, try to think of an example that doesn't involve human feces this time, because that's what I equate Hollywood's offering to. But, if all the pizza places out there are making their pizza crusts out of Play-Doh, and that's just it, and that's all the pizza you can buy now from a proper pizza place, then show people that you're actually serving this pizza out of your kitchen that's made with proper bread crust, or whatever. So that's all. Anyway, I've talked too long. I've rambled along. I'll probably try to edit some of this down to make it a little bit better. But thanks for watching. Those are my thoughts on that. I'll be back more with book studies, anime check-ins, more Star Wars content, more writing tutorials and whatnot. Until then, keep enjoying and digging deeper, and either writing if you're a writer or consuming if you're, and I mean good consuming, SUMING, creative, independent stories that you know and love. Thanks for watching.